Hey, everybody. Welcome to our final key conversation on mental health during the month of May, being May 31st. This is technically the last day of Mental Health Awareness Month. For those that have been with us through the entire month, you've had an opportunity to see a number of great conversations that we've had talking about mental health from a variety of different angles within a business organization and even on a personal level. And admittedly, I've had a fabulous time hosting these events and really appreciate everybody that's been with us. Today, we're going to do one more, and we've got with us Haeli Harris, who's lead clinician with Nivati. Good morning, Haeli.
Good morning.
And then also we have Amelia Wilcox, CEO of Nivati, who is with us. Good morning, Amelia.
Hey, David. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So today, we have two wonderful guests, obviously, but we're not bringing anybody in. Today, we wanted to take some time to kind of recap all the conversations that we've had over the course of the month, which we've had a lot, and then really just kind of talk about how to keep the conversation going. Like mental health is an important topic. We've learned that over the last month, and really since I've been here with Nivati and well into the pandemic and even beyond that. But the conversation shouldn't stop today, and that's really what we want to talk about is keeping this conversation on mental health going after Mental Health Awareness Month is over. Before we get into some of the topics that we wanted to discuss, I wanted to kind of just review like all the different conversations that we've had over the course of May. I think it's just been incredible. I don't know if any have stood out to you, Haeli. You've been on quite a few with me, and Amelia, you've been on a few with me as well. But like, I'm just going through, we talked about CEOs, and we had Johnny Hanna on from Homey, which was just an awesome conversation about like what the executive's role is. We had Campfire join us and talk about communities and how important communities are. We've talked about finance with Saveology, how to take care of caretakers, like those that are taking care of kids and older and parents, or just other people. We talked about mental health for the HR executive with Elisa, which was a great conversation. This was a lot of fun. She's got a ton of energy. Gratitude with Logan. Vacations. How to talk to managers with Natasha, which was fun. Making employees feel like they matter with Paxton. Like the list is, I just thought it was such a great set of conversations that we've had this month. I don't know if did anything stand out to you guys as you think back on what we've had.
The one that stood out to me the most, I think, was the taking care of the caretakers. Just because I know firsthand, and I hear it so much, just how much caretakers are really trying and struggling with their own mental health. So I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, the pressure. There's so much pressure when you put somebody else above you that it feels like you're not really capable of. Like you start to take away from yourself, right? To a point that it diminishes your ability to take care of others, which I thought was a really excellent point from that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the conversation with Riley at Dome Day, just talking about vacationing and time off and all of the things starting. Like I learned so much. Like it takes 8 consecutive days once a year is really what people need. Really kind of changed the way I think about my own time off, as well as how my employees are using their time off. That it's better to have like a full 8 days once a year than to have like a bunch of long weekends throughout the year, which was surprising to me. I would have thought it would be the opposite, but it was really interesting. Just kind of reframe how we think about how we use our time off was really enlightening for me.
I really like the Thursday to Thursday. Speaking of, like Anne and I, my wife, we've been planning what our next vacation is supposed to be, and I told her we're going Thursday to Thursday. So that time off request is coming. You just wait for it here. I like that conversation a lot too. And vacation, PTO, just stepping away, like taking that break is just so important, right? And again, I think one of the key takeaways that talking about, and we'll talk about like what we've learned, but I'm going to throw this one out before, is that there's so much pressure that we just put on ourselves, right? Like all of the stuff, the community, like everything you talk about, gratitude, communities, caretakers, the financial stuff. it almost is like just pressure that we've put on ourselves, expectations that we've put on ourselves that just drive us to not be satisfied with what we're doing. I don't know, Haeli, maybe that's a rather enlightening thought to me that I just kind of had as I've thinking through the month, but you probably experience that a lot with the sessions and the people that you talk to.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, we put that pressure on ourselves, but I think that comes from the society and the way that society says that we're supposed to be living. So then we create all those negative thinking errors as far as like, I should be doing it this way. I need to be doing it this way. When in all reality, if we kind of step back, like it's okay to take that time off. We want to be in the office 24/7.
Yes. Somebody had something funny about the should-haves. A really funny joke, a line, but I can't remember exactly how it goes, and I'm sure I'm going to mess this up, so I'm not going to say it. But we say the word should almost too much. Yeah. All right. So going into today's topic, let me just kind of set the stage for you all, and I'll turn it over to you. But today's topic, we want to talk about keeping the conversation going. So obviously we've had some great conversations in May. Mental Health Awareness Month, super important, but we've got to keep the conversation going. And so there are a couple stats that I'm going to share, and then I'll kind of turn it over to you to talk us through what this means. But we heard this over the course of the month. 41% of adults are reporting a diagnosable mental health condition, right? That's diagnosable. Could be depression, anxiety, ADHD. I mean, the list goes on what that could actually mean. But that's quite a number of people. And that number has, I think, gone up quite a bit since the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't include the people who are not necessarily diagnosable, but still struggling with mental health, right? So that number technically, with the amount of stress that's on people, is probably a lot higher. 50% of employees will never seek help about their mental health, which I think is actually really fascinating. A number of employees, a number of people are having an issue. 50% of those people will never talk about it. And the reason people don't talk about it, based off of the study that came from the WHO, I believe, is that 26% of people say they don't get the help that they need because of structural barriers. And that could be cost, that could be lack of availability, transportation, inconvenience, whatever the case may be. But 94% of the people who don't actually get the help that they need come from attitudinal barriers. And what that means is there's stigmas associated with it. They have a belief that maybe they'll get better on their own. Whatever the case may be, it's an attitude that prevents them from going forward to get the help they need. There's a lot of people that need help. There's a lot of people that never seek help. And there's a lot of people who probably don't know how to get help because they have these attitudes towards themselves or towards the idea of what a mental health condition is. That's the stage. So obviously what we want to talk about is kind of how to, one, maybe overcome some of those attitudinal barriers, but understand that people will have a conversation about mental health. There, so many people we know are affected by it, right? And so that's kind of what we want to talk about today. So Haeli, I'm going to start with you here. When we have these attitudes towards what mental health actually is, like, what's the best way to overcome some of these attitudes that prevent us from getting the help that we need?
I think a lot of it's, I would say two things: talking about it. Because when we talk about it, it makes the struggles more normal. Like, kind of like, oh my gosh, you're going through this too. I'm going through this. Oh, they're going through this. And I think we start to see that a big part of the population is struggling with their mental health. So I think that's a big key in helping with these attitudinal barriers. And then because it's going to help with the stigma. I know a lot of people, there's still that stigma. I love that we're talking about it more, and that it's not quite as big of a stigma as it was maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but it's still there. And I still know a lot of people that are struggling, but they don't want to say that they're struggling with their mental health or that they need any help.
It does feel like it's still quite a taboo topic in a lot of ways. Just like when we were talking with Spencer Barkley, like finance, and talking about finances is rather taboo in a lot of ways in this culture. Mental health has that same sort of like taboo experience, like, oh, and maybe it's not so much taboo. I think there's like a fear of repercussions, which we talked about a lot with Natasha Bowman, right? Like the repercussions that are associated with talking about mental health. Like if I have an issue, people are afraid that something's going to something bad's going to happen to them with that, right?
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that fear?
I think that's where we have to start being more accepting, as well as people that are struggling with their mental health in the workplace, especially, that even though people struggle, it doesn't mean that they're, something necessarily wrong with them, because then they'll want to share more. They're more likely to share.
Yeah. So to you, Amelia, we talked about the conversation is going to happen, especially for managers and people within the organization, HR teams, right? They're going to have these conversations. When we start having these conversations, a couple things that kind of stand out that I think people need to be prepared for, where I've seen it, right? Can you talk through a couple of things that people should like mentally prepare for as these conversations come about? Because I don't know if you could really go through the workplace now and not have a conversation on mental health with somebody, whether it's a subordinate, an employee, right, that's working for you, a colleague, maybe a manager. You're going to have this conversation, right?
Yeah. It actually comes up for me, like personally, even in my role, in my one-on-ones or like my step over one-on-ones, employees that report to the people that report to me. And I mean, we have a good job, obviously, because we're a mental health company, I think, of fostering a culture where it's okay to talk about it. And I think the reason I have so many of those conversations too is because I'm open about, my struggles with people in my family, things that are hard. And then it just got that safe place of trust. So as far as how that like applies to other organizations, I think there's a couple key components, just arming your managers and your leaders with the way to talk about it, right? So when those conversations do come in, how to respond, what do they say, what do they not say? Which is something I know Haeli talks a lot about, is just, not saying like, oh, keep your chin up, it'll get better, or toughen up, or you shouldn't feel like that, right? We have to teach the people in those leadership positions how to validate the person, validate their feelings. And I think another component is not solving their problems for them, right? Like a lot of times people aren't coming to you, oh, this is what I'm struggling with, and they want a solution.
Mm-hmm.
No, they want to be heard, they want to be validated and understood. And also just informing you as their leader that maybe this might be negatively affecting their work or their ability to focus, if they're struggling in some other area. So it's really, I think, a cry for empathy and understanding more than anything. So making sure that leaders know how to have those conversations and know how to respond. Even something as simple as like giving them like a little rubric that'll be like what to say, what not to say, so they just have that like on their computer, on their wall, so they know exactly how to respond.
It's often, I kind of laugh because when I got put in a management position, I think I shared this earlier, but I got put in a management position and I didn't know how to have this conversation. Like I was a manager because I was good at the job, executing on the job that I was supposed to be doing, right? And I'd been trained on all the skills, whatever the case may be. But then you get into a management position and it's more of like the people skills, and you don't get, I've been lucky enough to have some people skill training, I would say, but on the topic of mental health, I did not, right? And a lot of managers oftentimes get put in that position because they're this A-type personality that just gets stuff done. And so the first thing people want to do is like solve the problem. And that's not what you want to do here, right? Like there's a liability issue. HR is like, don't say anything. But I was never taught what to actually do in this position or how to have this conversation. It feels like this kind of a training, this manager training on how to have a conversation about mental health, is almost as important as like, I think about the annual sexual harassment training that most companies have to go through. Like every year you have to go through a sexual harassment. And every year we have to like roll our eyes, like, do people really actually say this stupid stuff, right? But you have to almost do the same kind of training, I think, for mental health in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a really good parallel. I think that would be an awesome world, right? If it was like you had to do your sexual harassment to check the box, but every year you also got some mental health training. I think that would be really awesome.
Yeah, because when I was a manager, I did not know how to have the conversation. And we talked like the first thing you do is say, bring on HR, which is not maybe that's still the right route to go with, but there's so much more that a manager can do because they are in that like position of confidence in a lot of ways, right?
If they're doing a good job and they're having their one-on-ones and they're fostering trust and connection with their employees, then they are going to be in the best position to receive those types of, comments and have those types of conversations more than somebody in HR that maybe they really only met when they were onboarding,
Yeah. Haeli, I'm going to ask you this question because we've talked about when we had the conversation with Johnny Hanna, like a lot of times, and Amelia, you just proved it, right? That the conversation gets easier when the executive team is kind of leading. But the key to leading from an executive team is to lead with empathy. Now, I often tell people, I hear that word a lot, but I always forget what it means. Can you talk to us what empathy actually is and like how an executive team can maybe lead with empathy?
Yeah. And I think it's important that when anybody goes into an executive role or managerial role, that they know that this part is also part of the job. It's not just the company, the work piece. There's also this people piece where you have to have empathy and care about the people on your team as well.
Right.
And part of empathy, a big part that a lot of people struggle with is, putting yourself in that person's shoes and really trying to understand that their struggles are real and that their struggles are valid, even though it might not be what you struggle with. And it might sound super easy, just get over it. But to this person, this is a real struggle, and we need to validate that for them.
Yeah. And you can validate the person. I struggle with this more than anybody, I feel like, but validate the person without validating whatever the situation is, right? Somebody says something rather drastic. You're like, okay, don't do that, but we understand that you feel that way.
Yeah. And I work a lot with couples and couples counseling and marriage therapy, where we can validate each other and really work on making sure each other feels cared about and heard without having to say what you're doing is right or wrong or, any of that kind of stuff. So you can validate without having to put down what they're doing or things like that.
Make a position out of it, right? Take a position, I guess would be the right way to say that. Okay, so last thing that I think is really important that I really want to make sure we touch on, and then we're going to go into like what we learned this month. So Amelia, you had kind of touched on this, but I think this is really one of the most important things that we could end on is, again, these conversations are going to happen, and especially for managers and or employees and HR teams, like the number one thing I feel like people need to do is to make sure that the employees understand what resources are available to them. And there actually is quite a bit more out there than what we'd say. Most companies default to the EAP as a solution, right? And that can be, I think, for crisis management, but there's so much more that I think can be done and made aware, right? Can you talk about what some of those options might be, or how to have, or kind of show what kind of options are available for a company to have or an employee to have beyond just the EAP? Like there's text lines and things like that too, right?
Yeah, there's like a national crisis text line that is free and anybody can use it to talk to somebody 24/7 via text, which is actually how like a large percentage of people prefer to communicate, especially when it's embarrassing or very emotional or shameful, or there's a lot of negative emotions like linked going on when you're in a crisis situation. So texting can be a really helpful medium for people. So there's a crisis text line. There's also the National Suicide Hotline. If people are feeling suicidal, they've got people trained specifically to help talk you through those suicidal thoughts and kind of help you come down from and get you connected with the resources that you need. There's companies like ours, obviously. If somebody has something like Nivati in place, there's the ability to work with a live counselor. We also have like downloadable, we have like a manager's training handbook that's free that you can get on our website and hand out to your managers. But there are a lot of different options. And like you said, EP, if you have an EAP in place, making sure that the managers know how to get in touch with the EAP, where to direct the employees with whatever resources are available. Some companies have like even more awesome resources in that, like even internally, where maybe they have like a group. We have like one of our clients that has like a group that meets every like Thursday morning, and the CEO leads it, and it's really about
Right.
accountability and talking about mental health. So just kind of depending on the organization, what types of resources they have, just a matter of like repeating that over and over and over again to those managers so that they know, the tip of their tongue exactly where to point people.
It seems like just in the small experience that I have, and even in some of these conversations, in order for somebody to really, those benefits get taken advantage of more, it feels like when the employee has direct access, right? Like they don't have to go through a middleman. They don't have to talk to a manager, like where they can go directly to solve, because it may be embarrassing or maybe something they don't want to bring up in fear of retaliation, whatever the case may be, right? Like, so whatever that benefit is, and this is why you want to make sure you share how to get in touch with these resources, or how to have these resources or access these resources, because a lot of employees don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Going back to that statistic, 50% of employees will never seek help, and they won't seek help because they don't want to talk to anybody about it. They want to just do it on their own. And so having that readily available so they know how to do it on their own, I think is super key.
Yeah, the more we can empower the employees and arm them with the resources directly, the higher results we're going to see, just because it does eliminate that whole, I have to share this with my manager or share this with HR. And if you're divorced, right, or you're having suicidal thoughts or something like that, like the last thing you want to do is tell someone in your organization. Our surveys have shown that like people are afraid it will put their job at risk, right? If somebody knows they're struggling with an anxiety disorder or something like that. So whatever you can do to remove all of those friction points along that journey, and just give them direct access to whatever resources they need, the better your results are going to be.
Awesome. All right. So we went through the outline, or through all the conversations we've had. So let's talk about what we've learned this month. Thinking back, again, we participated in a lot of these conversations collectively, the three of us. And I was going to have Joseph on as well, but he's on vacation today because he was in a number of these conversations too with us. But looking back, what did we learn? Haeli, I want to start with you. When you go back and think of the conversations that we've had, what did you learn this month?
With all the conversations, I think two things that really stood out to me that were key is education, learning more and more about it, and all the pieces that apply to mental health, like pulling in the finance piece and learning more about that. People don't really know much about nutrition and how that plays a role in your mental health. So education, I think, is huge. And then the second piece that seemed very common throughout them is stop putting yourself on the back burner and really take care of yourself first. In all settings, because then you're going to be better for other people as well. Be it your employees, your family, your friends, whoever it is. But you need to be taking care of your mental health.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Amelia, what did you learn this month?
I think a couple things. One being, which is something we already knew, but it's just a good reiteration. Like the most effective and most free way that you can really improve mental health of the organization is simply by talking about it, communicating, being open and vulnerable, and that comes from the top, right? So the higher up in the organization you can get people to share, that doesn't cost anything, and it makes a huge impact on these, and giving them permission to struggle, and helping them to not feel alone, and all of those things. That it pays dividends on a $0 investment. So that is one of the big things. And then just definitely kind of what I already mentioned about like not solving the problem for the employee, which is, like you said, you're a manager because you're really good at solving problems and executing, and like people in leadership positions I'm such a problem solver and a fixer that it's really hard to remind myself, like, oh, I just need to validate, listen, and not solve.
Yeah.
I need that constant reminder myself, but that was a real key thing that I took away this month.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking so much time this month. I know I've asked a lot of you and Joseph, and then everybody who's actually participated in our conversations this month as well. We've had so many good conversations. I've learned every day and every time I've done one of these, I've taken away so much. It's been fabulous. So thank you all to the previous guests that we've had on for these conversations, and those that have watched. Hopefully we've made it a little bit easier for you to have a conversation on mental health within your organization, within your family, and ability to address it. If you want to learn more about mental health benefits, I encourage you to take a look at Nivati.com. Obviously, that's where the three of us work at. I think we've got a pretty decent platform there. And if you have other questions, feel free to hit any one of us up on LinkedIn or shoot an email our way. So thank you again for participating. Remember, it is Mental Health Awareness Month, but the conversation on mental health doesn't end today. Keep it going, and we look forward to doing this more. I think we're going to turn something into a more regular thing on these moving forward, but more details to come later. Thank you, Haeli. Thank you, Amelia, for your time. We look forward to talking more. Have a great day, everyone.